Yeah. So, what I find so fascinating through the studying I've been doing, because I have been trying to pinpoint, like, everybody I'm working with is like, they've got all these symptoms of survival mode, perfectionism, paranoia, they're all or nothing. All of those are symptoms, right? That's adrenal. That is, the thyroid. People commonly have thyroid issues. Sleeping problems, just social paranoia, social issues, all of those things are symptoms. And I'm like, all of those are like survival mode, post-traumatic stress type symptoms, survival mode symptoms, and not everybody's been molested. In fact, that's not as common as you would expect, or as they used to expect when someone had these symptoms, like in eating issues and eating control. They would assume that you had trauma, but no one's questioning the trauma coming from the thin supremacy, inferior fatness belief system that the culture has completely adapted to. Like the trauma of being rejected and abandoned or seen as inferior because you have body fat. No one really looks at that, because doesn't everybody want to be thin? Don't we all want to be beautiful?
It's ridiculous,
But that
as something to the contrary of that, like I've been going through this, right? Like even with the people that I've been working with, at my clinic, and even the other like MAs that I work with, we've sort of been talking about this, and it's a battle for me to like shift their thinking too.
Yeah, because they don't understand it, because they're more than likely in that state.
They are.
Yeah, and that's the thing. It's become so accepted, and no one knows it. It's like, this is not normal. Like, why are we praising obsessive compulsiveness towards certain things that we praise? Obsessive compulsiveness towards religion is so good. Obsessive compulsiveness towards nutrition is really good for you. Obsessive compulsiveness to exercise. I'm so proud of you for running that ultra marathon. No one's seeing that there's a problem.
Now you're wrecking your knees, and like you have major issues 10 years from now.
You have like multiple PhDs. We should be so proud of you. If we just take a step back and look at what does it take for a human being to accomplish this? A shit ton of testosterone and all those adrenal hormones. That's what it takes. Superhuman activation of that nervous system. That's what it takes.
Yeah.
That's not okay.
No.
It is okay if your child is going to get hit by a car. You want to activate that. You want to activate that, and that's what it's meant for. But not for, am I liked and loved by my family, by my friends. That it shouldn't take that much work.
Yeah.
That is in essence slavery, and this is where I believe it is a syndrome. So I'm just going to explain to you what they find with Stockholm syndrome. It isn't, first of all, there's a variety of things that create the syndrome, which is, one, the captor is controlling your food. Okay. They're controlling those primal necessities. So when we look at primal necessities, 1, food and water, 2, shelter, and protection from the elements, and 3, social engagement and tribal love and acceptance. So when they see Stockholm syndrome, they see all of these being manipulated. Okay. And once the person who is being held captive internalizes the system, they start to have that euphoric need for the system to feel loved by their captor, to be able to get their food, and to feel there's some level of righteousness in it. Right. Yeah. But in there is abusiveness that the person being held captive agrees with. I should be held responsible. I do need to work on my self-control. I shouldn't be able to eat these foods. I can't go to those parties. I need to be thin, and I shouldn't eat, right? Yeah. And I remember telling you this, like, what human being, and I said to you, imagine if I took my 15-year-old daughter and said, you can't have that food, and because you can't fit in your clothes, you can't go out.
Oh my God.
I said something to that degree, and I remember you going, you would be turned in. Like it would not be good. But you don't see that because you know what? You've internalized the health righteousness. So I shouldn't be eating these foods.
Yeah.
I mean, there is abusiveness involved with this, right? And you don't see it. So when you look at, okay, so the Stockholm syndrome symptoms, it isn't affected by like antidepressants. That doesn't fix anything. What they found is that it's once someone comes out of it, they immediately see it, and all of the symptoms they had prior just disappear. If you start to research that, you're going to say that you'll see that. You'll see they believe that no narcotics work. It really comes down to the beliefs that they've internalized, and the idea they can't see the abusiveness because they've reasoned and rationalized that it's good for them.
Yeah.
Just think about that. And I want you to think about how you got out like snap. And all of a sudden those symptoms went away. And all of a sudden you're seeing how fucked up that system is. Yeah. Haven't you noticed, like, have you seen any commercials or any like, yeah, I'm removing dairy, gluten. I'm going to do this like fast. And
oh my gosh.
And how
I see it every day in my patients, right? I mean, they talk about this stuff. And I have to like shake my head and just like not agree, but just like, okay, I mean, I'm here to listen, but oh my God, like the obsessiveness is really nuts. Like it's hard for me now to remember what it was like before. I mean, there's like glimpses of it, but I'm so far away from that state of mind that it's difficult to even comprehend that I put myself, there was so much micromanaging on things that should just happen so naturally, and with like, now you can actually focus on the real aspects instead of worrying about exactly what food goes through your mind, and like you're packaging your meal prepping and you're doing all this stuff instead of asking your body like, what do you feel like eating?
Yeah, it should be. It shouldn't be that hard. It should be so easy. Like the human body, in order to be whatever you think is healthy, which is now too, the whole concept of healthy is so arrogant, and like who defines that?
Right.
Who out there is going to say, I know what it takes to be healthy? Oh, there's narcissism right there. And if you're going to try to sell it and then say it's my program, now you're a sociopathic narcissist. Right? Because you're so amazing. Oh my God, right? That's like, no one sees that though. So you end up being abused and having symptoms of battered wife syndrome or Stockholm syndrome. And you don't even know it because you should not eat that food, and you should try to lose weight, and you should try to micromanage because you need to do that to be acceptable and to be seen as worthy and accomplished. You should starve the hell out of yourself because that's so good for you.
Oh my God, that's a ridiculous amount of the level that you need to reach in order to feel like you are a worthy human being.
Yeah, just safe in your own tribe. Just safe in the tribe. So what I believe and what I'm seeing is I believe this is a syndrome where the third hierarchy of need, which is your pack need, is being threatened. Okay. And it's being threatened based on these social ideals. It's not really being threatened. But it is relative to the concept or social program. It's a program. So once you internalize the program, if you aren't succeeding at it, you're going to go into inflammation. And it's severe. It's not just like, oh, I had a little sugar inflammation. That's not a big deal. We're talking fight or flight inflammation, which completely tilts your entire endocrine system into a super sensitivity, right?
Yeah.
So ultimately, that if you believe being thinner is going to make you more acceptable, you are now taking your food, okay, and making it super codependent.
Yeah.
Right? Between the body image, the image, the idol that you're meant to be, which is the weird, once you internalize the thinnerness, the thin supremacy, now you have this codependent relationship between your body and the diet and the need to restrict. And that triggers the most foundational survival mechanism, which is security with food. You see now where the syndrome is starting to happen. And it's like, there's no way for you to get out of your food addiction unless you fix the issues with body image and your social tribal security. So that's why with every client, I'm like, the food is not the problem. We don't even need to talk about it. Because that ultimately just goes away. Like, boom, over.
Yeah.
We don't have to work on it, because that's what I've seen. The more someone fixes the tribal issue around body image and narcissism, okay, and it could be narcissistic victim syndrome, which is different too. Like, you're a victim of the narcissism, which I think everybody is. But ultimately, you fix that, and you no longer believe the body is the route to fixing your security with other people. All of a sudden, the threat on food is just gone.
Oh my gosh.
And so all of that freaking, feast before famine, obsessive compulsive compartmentalization of the food, all of that, which would be amazing if we were in a third world country.
Yeah. Right.
Goes away, because we actually, in reality, live in insane abundance.
Yeah.
Right? So all of a sudden you live in reality, and that panic about getting food is gone. The drive to get food is gone. The fear of food is just completely poof. All of that just goes away. And all of a sudden, someone who's been labeled a binge eater, food addict, right? Bulimic, all those things, sugar addiction, just poof, goes away. That's what you experienced.
Yeah, absolutely.
So if you were to give your opinion, your medical opinion on what do you think is going on here, what do you think it is? In terms of like, well, why don't we do this? Compare the symptoms you had before and where they're at today. Again, doing nothing but changing your beliefs around what makes you acceptable as a pack animal.
Yeah. So I was in fight or flight completely all the time before. Anxious, just very second guessing everything I was doing, everything I was saying, everything I was wearing. My interactions with people were not real. I was in my body and obsessing over my body, and so I couldn't really have a connection with anybody outside of that. Just very conscious of every little thing. Insecure, and post this work, I am so much more relaxed, just as easy. It's almost like a different personality has really taken form. And it's this lighthearted person who's really like giving and kind, and is not gonna is not gonna be so obsessive. If you make a mistake, I'm like a lot more empathetic around that, and I'm a lot more self-loving and self-caring when it comes to, if I even think I made a mistake, I'm like, cool, like, life's okay. Just a lot happier.
And you're not taking, and you don't have the same binging. You don't even, you probably are just eating. There's no panic or fear about the food. You're no longer obsessing about the food. So when you do eat, what you ate doesn't affect your emotional state, so it doesn't carry over to the next meal. You'll notice that when you're hungry, sometimes it's even like, oh, I'm hungry. Oh, and then you're eating and you really don't have any issues. You'll notice that your reception of when hunger goes away is much clearer. The other thing you'll notice is that the choice in eating changes, because instead of being so mentally constructed, remember that frontal cortex has been hijacked, which is what happens when someone's in fight or flight. There's very little oxygen going here. All of it's going there. And it's basically saying, you got to fix it. You're no longer making decisions with this just mental construction that is outside of yourself. It is like, what tastes good? What's going to taste good? You start connecting more to the body and what's truly going to bring pleasure. Yeah. That narcotic response, now you're connecting to all of those receptor sites in the mouth, which are freaking huge. That's such a big deal. Right? Now you're like listening, and it's God, it's so much more gratifying. I mean, even that can affect your emotional well-being. Just the fact that you're actually gratifying something that is so primal and evolutionary to our brain's ability to function. You're eating pleasurable food and you don't feel ashamed about it or fearful about it.
No, it's almost weird though. Like initially that was like the case where I'm like sitting there, I'm like, oh my God, I can have this food and there's like no shame behind it, there's nothing behind it. Now it's to a point where it's like, cool, like especially if I'm out in this social setting and that's typically where I'm eating, it's become more about the conversation and about like where I'm sitting and like looking around and like it's like almost a child discovering this world for the first time.
Yes. Now that you're here, do you see that this is meant to be our natural state of being?
Yeah. Completely.
This is supposed to be our natural state. That sketchy, shifty-eyed, like rabid animal, like emotionality around. I have to be healthy. We have to focus. We have to have those goals. We have to reach for the skies. You know, that crazy. All that sets you up for is nuttiness.
Yeah.
All those symptoms that everybody's coming in. The other thing is, after the fact, can you see if you're in that state, how maybe some of the illness can be predictable? Like you can now go, holy shit, if you're in fight or flight, here are the primary organs being taxed. This is.
Well, I mean, it's like that type A personality thing, right? Like,
yeah, you mean fight or flight. You mean exactly. Someone in survival. Right. Like, why are we being, I'm type A type of personality. The first thing I hear when I hear that is, oh shit, dude, you are in trouble. Yeah. That's not natural. That isn't a personality trait. That is completely symptomatic.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, whenever they've studied in people that have this sort of OCD, they tend to have higher risk of heart attacks and like other chronic diseases. So, and of course, so all your hormonal system in your body is completely out of whack.
Yeah. So and some of the common.
Sooner or later, that's going to affect your body.
So PCOS.
Yeah.
Right. The whole metabolic syndrome. Adrenals, thyroid, ovary issues, testicle issues, right? Those are your fight. I mean, just the whole thing to some point. I mean, you could look at genetics and say, well, how it hits someone genetically is going to be different. So I moved 5 times in the last 5 years. And 3 years ago, I had moved across the country twice. And when I got back to Boise, I went and got blood work done. And it came back pretty bad, like way out of, it was abnormal bad. And they were like, you need to come back in. Well, I was like, I've been moving, tons of stress, and I could feel it. Come to find out I was diabetic. My A1Cs were way off.
Yeah.
So it hit my pancreas, right? I don't meet the typical diabetic, like, associations. So for me, it's like, oh, well, maybe genetically I'm predisposed to that organ. It's basically telling me to screw off under stress. Anyway, so it's metabolic syndrome.
Yeah.
Why aren't we looking at it as, psychologically, this could be how your body is trying to survive chronic stress, right? Chronic.
Right.
Anyways.
It's so much better on the other side. So much better on the other side.
Right? So easy.
It's so easy. The struggle that I had, and like I just want to take a minute to talk about it because I feel like maybe this would help someone at some point.
That's why I'm recording this. What do you want to tell the listener right now who's going, how the hell are they how did she do that?
So it was like, so the initial switch was easy, that whole getting rid of like that constraint on food and things like that, because you just sort of give yourself that freedom to do whatever you want and eat whatever you want, and that's fine. That's the easy part, because I think at some point in your brain it's like it's a very natural thing because you've been holding yourself back from doing what's natural. Yeah,
you're suffering. Yeah, you're suffering enough that first step can be easy.
Yeah. The second part was tough. Getting rid of that ideal body image was tough.
That's step 1.
Because it, I thought I had gotten rid of it, but I hadn't.
No, you put it in a closet.
You're like what more to do. Like, I'm walking around, and I'm like, I'm imagining myself in, like, a lot heavier of a state than where I am now. And I'm looking at people, and I know that they're judging me, and I'm trying not to care. And I wasn't caring. But something was just stopping me from feeling that elation, and that I would hear your listeners talk about, right? This, like, moment of, like, something clicked, and, like, they're in this, like, happy mode where it's almost like being high on a drug, and I didn't get it. I was like, what the hell are they talking about? Like, why am I not getting there? And we just kept working on it, and you kept telling me, you're like, you haven't made it real. You haven't made it real. And I was like, oh, okay.
So you have to go into the realness of, like, no, really, you're going to be this fat forever, and making it permanent. And that's why I use that language. No, it has to be permanent. And I don't know how many times I told you that, and you were probably like, sure, yeah, and you hadn't made it permanent. What happens when...
And I kept thinking, I'm like, oh, I'm just going to go back on HPC.
Right.
You know, once this happens, I'm going to go back on HPC.
And then I'll be thin, and I'll feel so good, and then I won't have the binging problems. And so that's coming from that state of fight or flight. Right? And so it's like, you can't create a solution from down there. It won't work.
No.
So we had to...
You literally have to get rid of that. You have to get rid of the fact that you think you're ever going to lose weight. And you have to make that so real and so...
permanent.
Like, concrete in your head.
Yeah, and it has to be permanent.
Or else this whole, like, revelation never comes.
Nope, you're correct.
I think at one point it happened. I think it was happening somewhat consciously, but it wasn't happening subconsciously. And at some point, something happened. It was midnight, and I was, like, kind of up right before going to sleep. And all of a sudden, I started, it was a very natural state. I started imagining myself when I was, like, 7 years old. And I saw myself basically this innocent child becoming older and older, and how much crap she would say to herself. How much negative things she would just say to her soul, and how much she would, like, say abusive things to her body, and just tell herself that she's not good enough. And I flipped it, and I became that child's mother. I became my own mother.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember, like, finding this girl when she was 7 and just, like, giving her so much love and so much care.